Harley dealers played the long game, and now it's blowing up in their face. Overpriced bikes, ridiculous loans, hidden fees stacked on top of hidden fees. For years, they got away with it, but not anymore. Inventory is stuck, buyers are done, and the dream they sold? It's starting to rust. This isn't a slump, it's a collapse. And what happens next could shake the entire motorcycle industry. The illusion of value. For years, motorcycle dealerships, especially those selling Harley Davidson bikes, crafted an illusion so convincing that even lifelong riders couldn't see through it. They didn't just raise prices, they rewired consumer expectations. What was once a fair deal became a fantasy. What was once overpriced became normalized. And what should have caused outrage instead became routine. That is the power of slow manipulation. And dealerships played that game like professionals. Before the pandemic, a base model cruiser was a working class dream. You could walk into a dealership and, with a bit of savings and a fair loan, ride out on something that looked, sounded, and felt like freedom. But around the early 2010s, the pricing started creeping upward. Not because of inflation, but because dealerships saw what riders were willing to pay. Then came the pandemic, and with it a once-in-a-generation opportunity to rewrite the rulebook. Global supply chains broke down. Microchip shortages made headlines. Raw materials were backlogged. That much was real, but dealerships didn't just pass on the increased cost, they turned it into a justification, a weapon. Supply is low, demand is high, they said as they jacked up sticker prices, added market adjustment fees, and convinced riders this was the new normal. And here's where it gets sinister. Many riders believed it. The fear of missing out became a sales tool. Buyers were told that if they didn't purchase now, the price would be even higher tomorrow. And with fewer bikes on the floor, those words carried weight. The dealership floor transformed from a place of negotiation into a high-pressure showroom, where hesitation meant losing the chance to own the ride of your dreams. What they didn't tell you was that those inflated prices would not return to normal, because the goal was never temporary inflation. It was permanent conditioning. They wanted you to believe that a $30,000 base touring bike was normal, that paying over $15,000 for an entry-level model was standard. They wanted that mental shift to stick. And for a while it did. But once they had riders hooked, they moved in for the real kill. Because the sticker price was just the bait. The real trap was buried in the paperwork you never saw coming. The motorcycle loan trap. Here's how a dealership can steal your future one payment at a time. If price inflation was the gateway, financing was the prison. Most riders don't walk into a dealership with $25,000 in cash. They finance. And that's where the real profit begins. Not on the sale price, but on the interest, the terms, and the time. During the post-pandemic surge, dealers pushed buyers into 5, 6, even 7-year loans. On paper, the monthly payment looked manageable. $200 here, $300 there. But buried in those long-term agreements were ballooning interest rates, hidden fees, and fine print that guaranteed one thing: you would end up paying nearly double the cost of the bike. Let's break it down. A base model bike priced at $22,000 could, under these dealer-arranged loans, end up costing closer to $40,000 by the time the final payment cleared. How? Through interest rates that crept above 8%, extended terms that stretched repayment into the next decade, and additional charges like loan origination fees and mandatory insurance clauses. And here's the real trick. The dealerships position these long loans as a favor. "We're making it easier for you to afford your dream bike," they'd say. What they were really doing was loading you with decades of debt in exchange for a depreciating asset. Even worse, those with less than perfect credit, often younger riders or working-class buyers, were hit hardest. They were sold on the dream of riding, then trapped in a financing nightmare they couldn't escape. Many found themselves underwater, stuck making massive payments on a bike worth half its loan value just 2 years in. The financial trap wasn't accidental, it was intentional. Because a rider in debt is a rider who stays loyal, not to the brand, but to the dealer that holds the keys. But even that wasn't the worst trick in the playbook. Because what they couldn't catch in the loan, they buried in the sales sheet, one fee at a time. hidden fees, and phantom bikes. By now, riders know that a motorcycle's manufacturer's suggested retail price is little more than a starting point. The real number, the one you pay, balloons quickly once you step inside the dealership. But what most riders don't realize is how much of that increase is pure fiction. Walk into any dealership and ask about a new model. The price you see on the tag is rarely the price you pay. Dealers tack on destination charges, dealer prep fees, document fees, and market adjustments, all of which are designed to look official but exist solely to boost profit margins. These can add anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 to the final price. And that's before the upsells begin. Want the bike? Sure, but only if you agree to their overpriced accessories. An extended warranty that covers almost nothing. A paint protection package that's little more than a wax job. Pre-installed upgrades you never asked for. Refuse them and some dealers will flat out deny the sale. But here's the most infuriating part. Many of the bikes sold under the illusion of scarcity, those "you better act now or it'll be gone" models, were never rare to begin with. Dealerships created artificial demand by hiding inventory, staging sold tags on unsold bikes, and playing hard to get, all to make riders feel like they were lucky just to be allowed to buy. It was manipulation, calculated, coordinated, and devastatingly effective. But the good news is the riders caught on. And finally, riders had enough. But what happened next wasn't a riot. It was a movement built on silence, patience, and power. This isn't guesswork. It's what we found in real paperwork and real forums. Like and subscribe if you've been there too. Riders Revolt. They didn't form angry crowds in dealership parking lots. They simply walked away. They stopped showing up. They stopped signing. They stopped buying. The Rider Revolt was quiet, but it was seismic. Buyers began waiting, knowing that dealerships couldn't keep up the game forever. They started leaning into the used market, where a well-maintained 10-year-old bike could be had for half the price of new and none of the headache. They opted out of high-interest loans and sales pressure. They started buying from each other, not from the showroom, and slowly dealerships began to panic. Bikes sat on showroom floors for months. Sales numbers slipped. Incentives reappeared. Special financing offers were suddenly back, but the damage had been done. The rebellion didn't just punish dealers financially, it shattered their perceived power. Riders were no longer afraid to wait, and with inflation, rising living costs, and economic uncertainty, they had every reason to do so. Motorcycles became a want, not a need, and that's when the system started to unravel. But the betrayal ran deeper than just the sale, because while dealerships broke trust at the register, the real betrayal was hiding under the seat, built into the bikes themselves. The death of simplicity. Once upon a time, riding was about freedom. It was about taking to the open road with a machine you understood, one you could maintain, customize, and trust with every turn of the throttle. But somewhere along the way, that simplicity vanished. Today's motorcycles are no longer tools of liberation. They're technology platforms stuffed with software, sensors, and components most riders never asked for. And the worst part? They're not making riding better. They're making it harder, more fragile, and less fun. Modern motorcycles are bloated with features that look good on paper but feel unnecessary in the real world. It's as if manufacturers are trying to turn motorcycles into rolling smartphones. But unlike a smartphone, when a touchscreen freezes at 60 miles per hour, the stakes are a lot higher. And riders know it. They feel the disconnection every time they ride. There's less feedback from the road, less visceral engagement with the machine. The thrill is being replaced by digital overlays and complicated menus. The motorcycle isn't a companion anymore. It's a system, one that requires updates, diagnostics, and occasionally a hard reset. It doesn't stop there. The more advanced the electronics, the more dependent riders become on the dealership. DIY maintenance is dying, and with it, the personal relationship between rider and machine. What makes this shift even more frustrating is that it's not what riders want. They want dependability. They want bikes that can be fixed with a wrench, not a firmware patch. The deeper the tech gets, the less control riders have over their own motorcycles. And that sense of ownership, The thing that made riding special in the first place is fading fast. And that complexity comes with a hidden cost no one warned us about. So where are riders going instead? Somewhere no dealer can touch. The used market uprising. While dealerships continue to push overpriced, overcomplicated motorcycles, riders are quietly building a rebellion, one Craigslist listing at a time. The used motorcycle market is exploding, and it's not hard to see why. It's not just about price, it's about trust. It's about control. It's about escaping the trap. Used bikes offer something new models no longer can. Simplicity. They don't have the same bloated tech. They aren't wrapped in fragile plastic. They don't require a software update to start. And they're built from a time when motorcycles were machines first, not digital platforms. For half the price of a new model, riders can get a well-maintained bike that runs just as strong, looks just as good, and rides even better because it doesn't come with all the electronic clutter. And because motorcycles don't wear out like cars do, a bike with 15,000 miles still has decades of life left in it. It's not just affordability, it's sanity. Riders don't want to argue with dealers over fees. They don't want to get trapped in 7-year loans. They want to hand someone cash, get the keys, and hit the road. The used market offers that freedom. No upselling, no lies, no pressure. And here's the kicker. Riders trust each other more than they trust dealers. Private sales are growing because there's honesty and person-to-person transactions that dealerships can't replicate. No prep fees, no add-ons, no financing traps, just the bike and the truth. But there's one group of riders who won't be back because they're gone for good. The aging rider crisis. For decades, motorcycle culture in America was shaped by a single generation, the baby boomers. They were the ones who made Harley Davidson a cultural icon. They filled the roads with chrome, built riding clubs, supported rallies, and made motorcycling a way of life. But now they're aging out, and the industry is struggling to fill the void. As boomers retire their bikes, the number of active riders is plummeting. The dealerships they once supported are losing their most loyal customers. The bikes they once cherished are sitting unsold. The community they created is shrinking every year. And the next generation, they're not buying in. Millennials and Generation Z face a very different world. Burdened with student debt, stagnant wages, and rising rent costs, most of them can't justify spending $25,000 on a recreational vehicle. For many, a motorcycle isn't a dream. It's a luxury they'll never afford. Culturally, the shift is even more dramatic. Where boomers saw bikes as freedom, younger riders often see them as impractical, unsafe, and outdated. Ride-sharing, remote work, and urban living have changed how people move. Fewer young adults even bother getting a license, let alone dreaming of owning a Harley. The result is a demographic crisis. The core audience is aging out and the replacement generation isn't stepping up. That's a death sentence for any industry built on passion. If new riders don't arrive, dealerships will close, events will fade, brands will collapse under their own weight, and the numbers, they're worse than anyone imagined. The soul of riding is cracking. And now the business model itself is imploding. What comes next isn't just cultural collapse, it's economic chaos. Because when bikes don't sell, dealers don't survive. And the panic is already setting in. Unsold and Unwanted. For years, Harley Davidson dealers operated in a seller's market. Motorcycles would hit the showroom floor and vanish within days. Riders lined up willing to pay markups just to secure a new bike before it was gone. But that era has ended, and what was once a symbol of scarcity and exclusivity is now a burden. Today, dealerships across America are filled with unsold motorcycles. This is not just a seasonal slowdown, this is a full-blown inventory crisis. The shift happened fast. In the early stages of the pandemic, production delays and shipping slowdowns created an artificial shortage. Dealers capitalized on this moment, jacking up prices and pushing the narrative that bikes were in extremely limited supply. Buyers bought in, both emotionally and financially. But as supply chains recovered, something unexpected occurred. Instead of demand rising to meet returning inventory, it vanished. Riders, burned by inflated prices and shady financing, began holding off. The need to buy right now evaporated. The result? Showrooms full of metal. Rows of cruisers, baggers, and trikes that nobody wants at current prices. Floor plans. Dealership loans used to finance inventory are ballooning. Some dealers are now on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars in unsold inventory that is depreciating by the day. In some regions, dealerships have started refusing new shipments. They simply cannot afford to take on more bikes they know they will not sell. That is unprecedented. A Harley dealership refusing to stock new Harleys? That would have sounded insane just a few years ago. But it is happening now, and it is happening everywhere. Major markets like California, Texas, and Florida are showing record inventory levels. Rural dealers are suffering too, often with even less foot traffic. And what is even more damaging is how quickly the illusion has shattered. It took years to build the narrative that new bikes were exclusive, limited, and high in demand. It took only months to undo it. Customers are noticing. They walk into dealerships and see the same models week after week. The mystique is gone. No urgency, no buzz, no competition. So naturally, you would expect dealerships to slash prices in a desperate bid to move units, right? Not so fast. Just because bikes are collecting dust doesn't mean dealers are ready to sell them for less. Instead, they started playing dirty. Desperation mode. Inside the walls of a struggling dealership, the pressure is suffocating. Sales targets haven't been met in months. Floor stock is overflowing. Corporate is calling every week, asking when inventory will finally move. And the sales team? They're drowning. Morale is at rock bottom. Turnover is spiking. Some dealerships have already cut staff or shortened hours. Others are quietly posting job listings, trying to replace veterans who couldn't take the grind anymore. This is not a business running at full speed. This is a business in survival mode. And when survival is the priority, ethics are often the first casualty. Salespeople are being pushed harder than ever. Do whatever it takes isn't a motivational slogan anymore. It's a directive. New hires are trained less in customer service and more in closing tactics. The goal isn't to find the right bike for the rider, it's to get someone to sign no matter what. Even finance managers are feeling the heat. The back office used to be about paperwork. Now it's about extraction. Get that rate up a point or two. Add that service plan. Bundle it with the tire warranty. We'll split the profit. It's a game of margins. And when the only way to survive is to squeeze every buyer for maximum revenue, the buying experience becomes a war of attrition. Customers feel it. They walk in expecting to shop and leave feeling hunted. Some never come back, but there is a new threat to dealerships that may not be fixable at all. Because what happens when riders decide they don't need dealerships at all? Death of the dealership. For decades, dealerships have been the gatekeepers of the motorcycle industry. You wanted a bike? You had to go through them. But that monopoly is breaking down. And leading the charge are riders. Consumers who are done with the games, done with the fees, done with the pressure. Direct-to-consumer sales are no longer a fantasy. They're becoming reality. Harley Davidson has already dipped a toe into this model with its electric division, offering online reservations and fixed pricing. Buyers choose a model, see the real price, and complete the transaction online. No haggling, no prep fees, no upsell pressure, just a clean, transparent process. For younger buyers raised on Amazon, Uber, and click-to-own simplicity, this is a dream come true. It also spells doom for traditional dealerships. The writing is on the wall. Dealerships that refuse to evolve will die. Those that embrace transparency may survive, but they'll have to give up the tricks that have kept them alive for decades. And even if they do survive, they still face one more challenge, a new kind of motorcycle that could destroy everything they've built. Because next up is a revolution dealers can't control, can't exploit, and may not survive. The electric dilemma. No rumble, no gears, no soul. That's the reality facing electric motorcycles today, and it's why so many riders simply aren't buying in. While manufacturers tout electric motorcycles as the inevitable next step in the industry's evolution, the truth is far more complicated. Riders aren't just concerned about specs or range, they're concerned about the very experience of riding being stripped away, digitized and commodified. At first glance, electric motorcycles seem like progress. Zero emissions, instant torque, lower maintenance. But what's being lost in this transition is everything that makes a motorcycle more than a machine. For generations, motorcycles have represented mechanical purity, a visceral connection between man, machine, and the road. With electric bikes, much of that connection is lost. There's no engine rumble, no gear shifting, no throaty exhaust note that vibrates your chest. The bike becomes silent, sterile, and for many riders, soulless. Range anxiety only deepens the disconnect. Most electric motorcycles today can only travel between 100 and 150 miles on a full charge. That's enough for city commuting, but nowhere near enough for touring, weekend rides, or cross-country trips. Activities that define motorcycle culture. Charging infrastructure remains another barrier. While cars benefit from expanding public charging stations, motorcycles are often excluded from that convenience. They can't use many fast-charging networks due to software incompatibility or design limitations, leaving riders stranded or tethered to slow home outlets. Then there's the price. Most electric motorcycles on the market cost between $20,000 and $30,000, far more than their gas-powered counterparts. Yes, some government subsidies exist, but they hardly close the gap. For a working-class rider, it's an impossible leap. And for someone just looking to get into riding, electric bikes are not just unaffordable, they're unapproachable. The marketing narrative around electric motorcycles only makes matters worse. Instead of embracing riding heritage or the sense of rebellion motorcycling was built on, electric motorcycle ads focus on clean tech, climate talking points, and lifestyle branding that alienates core riders. They speak to a new consumer that may not even exist yet, while ignoring the rider who just wants a simple, reliable, visceral machine. This disconnect is massive and growing. And if that wasn't bad enough, the next chapter of the motorcycle industry reveals something even more unsettling. It's no longer built for everyday people, riding into extinction. No riders, no bikes, no industry. That's where this is headed if nothing changes. This isn't just about sales or profit margins anymore, it's about cultural extinction. Motorcycling has always been bigger than any one brand. It's a lifestyle, a community, a symbol of freedom. But if no one can afford to ride and no one wants to ride, the entire culture collapses. You can already see the signs. Motorcycle events that used to draw tens of thousands are shrinking. Clubs are aging. Dealerships are turning into ghost towns. Social media feeds that once roared with custom builds and scenic rides are now quiet. The identity of a rider, the boots, the weathered jacket, the road stories, is being replaced with showroom debt, electronic dashboards, and broken dreams. The hardest truth is this: the next generation isn't coming. Millennials and Generation Z are not embracing motorcycling like their predecessors did. They face crushing student loan debt, housing costs, and stagnant wages. For many, a motorcycle isn't just out of reach, it's out of touch. Add to that rising insurance premiums, urban restrictions, and traffic dangers, and it becomes clear why the lifestyle no longer fits. But it's more than economic. It's cultural. Ownership doesn't matter the way it used to. Cars are tools, motorcycles are relics. The spirit of adventure has been replaced with algorithms, and the dream of the open road has become a luxury few can afford to chase. But it's not over. There's still one move left, and that final move belongs to the people who still care enough to fight. Rebuild or collapse. This isn't just about saving bikes, it's about saving what they stand for. The motorcycle industry stands at a crossroads with one last chance to either adapt or fade into history. If manufacturers and dealerships want to survive, they have to change everything, starting with the way they treat riders. That means bringing back affordable, durable bikes that real people can actually buy. Not just electric showpieces or chrome-covered touring ships, but simple, reliable machines that a working-class rider can wrench on in their garage. Motorcycles that prioritize the thrill of the ride over a laundry list of tech features. It means ditching the predatory pricing and manipulative financing schemes. Dealers that want to survive need to rebuild trust by offering transparency, honest pricing, and respect for their customers. The days of markup tricks and forced add-ons need to end. Riders are smarter now. They've had enough. It also means investing in the next generation. Manufacturers must create bikes and campaigns that speak to younger riders. Not with fake rebellion or influencer gimmicks, but with real value and real freedom. Riding needs to be reintroduced as what it has always been: an escape, a thrill, and a community. What do you think? Will Harley change or will history leave it behind? Drop your story in the comments, and if you want more real talk that puts riders first, hit subscribe.